proud to be a woman.
Girls and women are
powerful,
beauty,
badass,
feminine,
passion,
equality,
power, professional,
diligence,
advocates for change.
Hey there, She Plus listeners. Welcome back for another episode. Thanks for sticking around for this one. And if you're a new listener this time around, thank you for joining us. This is going to be a really insightful episode. We're speaking with Randee Steffen this episode. I'm not going to take away from what she tells you today about her story, but a highlight is that she is the treasurer for the state of Missouri with a grassroots organization called Moms Demand Action, which works tirelessly to help protect U.S. citizens from the dangers of guns and gun violence. And so I wanted to warn some of the listeners out there today, right now, that some of the content in this episode may be triggering and may be emotionally turbulent for you. So if you've been affected by gun violence or in any way, shape, or form, this topic is sensitive to you, please keep in mind that what we discuss in this episode may cause some reactions for you. And I certainly want to let you know that in advance. Like always, I will let the guest come in and share their fantastic story. So without further ado, here we go. Welcome back, She Plus listeners. This is your host, Elise, and I am bringing you another great episode. I am here on the line with Randee Steffen, and she is going to bring us some really interesting stories and information about her journey and her life to us today. Like always, I will let Randee take over the mic and tell us a little bit more. So, Randee, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, thanks, Elise. I am Randee Steffen. I am a mother of 2 adult children. I am a wife. I am an IT project manager, and I am also an activist in the gun violence prevention movement. I am the treasurer of Moms Demand Action in Missouri and have been in that role for almost 2 years.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff in one. There's a lot of different really important positions that you hold. First and foremost, obviously, mom and wife. So let's start with the IT consultant spot that you mentioned. So talk to me a little bit more about what that is and what you do and how you got into that space.
Sure. I actually have grown up in the computer science world. I was a math and psychology major at Vanderbilt University, where I met your mother. And from there, I took a job where I was an entry-level programmer. I quickly learned that I was better with people than I was with the coding. So I kind of moved up into the management ranks and ended up working for Ernst & Young, which is a large consulting company, and I was on their IT side. So I was ultimately became a senior manager at Ernst & Young. And after a while, I was working very, very hard, lots and lots of hours. I had 2 young children at home. I was traveling quite a bit. And I just decided I just really needed to do something else. So I actually left Ernst & Young and became an independent consultant for a client that I was working for through Ernst & Young, and worked directly for the client as an independent consultant in 1999. We were working on a Y2K project, which was right before the year 2000. I left Ernst & Young, and I thought I would just do it for a year for that particular client and then go find another job. And I have been an independent consultant ever since. So it's been close to 20 years. And I have basically gone from client to client. I have long-term projects with clients. And as a project manager, what I do is I generally work on large-scale system implementations. So I spend a lot of time doing conversions. So as, let's just say if you go to the grocery store and you see that they've changed from the way you put your checks through before, and now you do a little point of sale and things like that. All of those are IT projects that need to happen. And so I manage those projects. So I coordinate the activities of the computer science engineers, the people who do the development, the people who do the training, the people who do the marketing, and all of those activities have to come together. So I have been doing that for many, many years, and right now I have actually transitioned into a part-time role. So I am 3 days a week for the first time. I just started that in January, and have filled my time for the other days with my activism.
So in the IT consulting space, one thing that stuck out to me is, some of my background comes from actually recruiting at a tech company, a marketing tech company, and something that I was really interested in hearing your story is, you're a female in the tech space, and we hear a lot about how we're investing tons of money and tons of resources into reinforcing females to go into the tech space, into the IT space. And because it's not very female dominated, it's very male dominated at this point in time. So with all of that, what was your experience like as a female in the tech space?
That is a really good question, and I go back and I think about that sometimes. I did not really struggle very much with that. I was definitely in the minority. Many of my coworkers were men. There were lots of times I was the only woman in a meeting, or for my very first job, there was a department of, let's just say, 15 programmers, and I was the only woman out of all of them. And the only thing that really sticks out at me, it's funny, this just kind of came back to me like a year ago or so, is when I went back while I was doing my programming work. I decided to go back at my MBA, so I went back part-time at night, and I got my master's, and that's when I started getting promoted to be more of a manager. So I was actually the manager of that department then within like 5 years of leaving college. And so I had mostly men, all men, working for me, and most of them were my father's age. And it worked out okay. I had to tread lightly, but one time, one guy did tell me he was leaving. He was transferring to another city, and he said, as we were kind of having our exit interview, he said, "So are you ever going to just stay home and have babies? What's your plan?" I was like, "Well, my plan is to have this career, just like your plan is to have this career, and whether or not I have babies doesn't really have anything to do with my ability to have this career." And that was really the only time that I remember anybody, like, that I really felt odd about the whole thing, that I was like, that was an uncomfortable situation. Why did he even ask me that? Because I'm clearly his boss. I'm clearly able to do the job. Other than that, honestly, it's been okay. I strive very hard to mentor women and to encourage women into this industry and to support them when they struggle in different areas, just because I do agree that we need to get more women. And even in my role that I'm in right now, we have probably more women on the project management team than we do on the engineering side. And I don't know why that is. Even when I was in college and I was a math major, I was in the minority, certainly. My experiences have always been, for the most part, very positive. People were very supportive. I don't feel like I ever missed an opportunity for a promotion or for, doing something challenging because I was a woman. Anytime that I missed things, it was I chose that. Like when I became an independent consultant instead of staying on the really strong career track at Ernst & Young, it was 100% my choice because I just didn't want to work that hard anymore. So, and even Ernst & Young was pretty supportive. I never felt any kind of challenges being a female in that industry.
Well, it's good that you didn't have any of those challenges, because I know that I've heard here and there just that sometimes it is more difficult to be in a male-dominated space and not really have the resources or the support to get there. So you mentioned that you were managing a team of all men. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Did you deal with any imposter syndrome at any point in time? I've heard stories here and there about moments where you're in a position of power and you question why you're there in that position and in that space. And so did you experience any of those feelings at all?
Oh my gosh, I still experience those feelings every single day. Like, why do people pay me to do this job? I'm not that great at it. Or, I fake it till you make it has always been my motto. But no, there's many days I can remember where I was in a work challenging situation where I had to present in front of a group of people or facilitate a large meeting with high-level executives or managers, and I had to be the one, leading people through gathering their requirements or sharing test results. Or one of the big things that I do often is tell bad news. Like, that's my job as a manager, is to project managers to go to leadership and say, we said we were going to have this ready by, the end of third quarter, but it's not looking good. It's really probably going to be more like the middle of the fourth quarter or whatever. Or this resource hasn't been available as much as they should have been available, so we're falling behind here or whatever. And those situations are always challenging, and that's always when I doubt myself the most, is to say, have we done everything we can? Have I done everything I can as a project manager to identify those issues and to resolve them in a timely manner? I think I had never heard that term. What is it, Imposter Syndrome? I do like it. I think that's a really good description because, I just think that's, I don't know if it's because I'm female or because we're female that we just naturally don't have that confidence. But that is, of all the things I struggle with in my life, I would say confidence is the greatest. And I think I heard you actually on your last podcast when you were doing Q&A and you brought that up, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're speaking my language. And here I am, so much older and more experienced, and I still struggle with it. I'm much better now than I was in my 20s and 30s. And I think really probably 50s is when I kind of got to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good at my life in general. I'm successful. I'm happy. I got, 2 children that are successful. I'm married, in a very happy marriage. All those things, these are all really good things. And so I can just enjoy a lot. I don't have that anxiety that I've had for so many years in my, in my life. Am I doing what I should be doing? Am I good at it? Am I a good enough mother? Am I good enough at my job? Am I, all these kinds of things. And so I'm definitely getting better at it. But I still struggle with it every day.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that episode that you were talking about, I actually got called out by not one but 2 people in my life that specifically messaged me and said, you need to stop. You need to not say you lack so much confidence. It's that you're getting better and you're going there. And I think that's true. And I understand that my communication of that is definitely not the way that I wanted to share that with people. But I also think it's important for everybody to know that people constantly are struggling with it. As you mentioned, we're both struggling with it in different parts of our lives, and it's just something that constantly happens. And on top of that, I sat down with somebody who was in a higher position at my former company, and she told me it's constantly on my, my feedback and my reviews from people that sit above me, and it's something that people are always working on, and it's just amazing that it's so debilitating specifically for women. And I don't know why that is, but it's something that is constantly a struggle. I don't know why. Do you have any thoughts on why?
But it is interesting because my husband, that I've been married to for 33 years, and we were high school sweethearts, so I've known him for a very long time, and he has so much confidence. And I think that's what's so attractive about him to me, is that I just love that he walks through life confident. Really, there's just very few things that he says, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't think I've ever heard him say that. I mean, I've heard him say, oh, that's going to take me a little bit of time, or, yeah, I can do that, but I have to do some research, or, just even things around the house or whatever it is. And I admire that so much, because my initial response is generally, yeah, I can't do that. Again, I'm getting better. Every year I get better, and I am continually pushing myself out of my bubble. That was kind of when I turned 50. That was what I said I was going to do, was push myself out of my comfort zone and make myself do things that I don't feel confident about or comfortable with. And it's fabulous. I feel great. I just feel this incredible sense of accomplishment for small things, little things that I'm doing some crafting on my Cricut that I'm not really good at, but every time I do something, I'm like, look what I did. So I don't know if it's just a societal thing, that we were raised that we're not supposed to do things as well as men, or if, I don't know the basis of it, but I do know that one of the things I think that's so important to get over it is to have I'll call it sisterhood, for lack of a better word. I certainly have a sister who's my best friend, and we are each other's biggest champions. But I also have a large group of girlfriends that from all walks of my life, from high school to college to coworkers to just kind of every area of my life. I've been fortunate to collect an amazing group of women as friends, and that's really what's given me the courage to, as I said, step outside my comfort zone, and the just continually give me confidence. I'll call somebody, I'll say, I can't believe I need to do this, and they'll be like, are you kidding me? You're great at that. Remember when you did this? Or, just all different examples. And I think that's so helpful to put yourself out there and to make yourself do things, to have people who, you feel like have your back.
100%. I completely agree. And I mean, here I am doing this podcast, and I think there were a variety of reasons that I decided to do this, but truthfully, I mean, that's the biggest thing, is building my confidence through talking to other people and hearing about their experiences and figuring out how to navigate this crazy way of life. So it's helpful to even hear your own experiences and just how different everybody's path can be, but there are still so many similarities in different layers, and it's good to know that you can learn from everybody. And yeah, I'm not really sure where I was going with that, but
No, I think it's an evolution. It's a continuous evolution. I wish I would have gotten there sooner. So if I could give advice to some of the younger women out there, is, I think I use the term fake it till you make it, but push yourself. And why do you just continually think somebody else is better at it than you are? Because really they're not. And I don't want to just transition into my activism role, but like legislators, when I went to first meet with legislators for the first time, I was totally intimidated and so nervous. And, this person is representing us in Jefferson City for the state of Missouri, and, who am I to talk to them? And as you talk to these people, you realize, first of all, they are just people. And secondly, they really don't have any more skills or talents than you do. They just had the confidence and the energy and the interest to run for office. But there's a lot of things that I'm better at than some of these people, and I know that now. So I don't know where I was going either other than I think I just wish I would have learned that sooner. I would have learned that a little earlier. I could have enjoyed life a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely did want to transition and hear a little bit more about your activism roles, but one thing you did mention in there about not being afraid to speak up to legislators, it's really funny because in grad school, in just the first week alone, they came in and had a session telling us about what to expect when we go to the Hill, and we go and try and talk to spokespeople and congressmen and congresswomen and all of that. And they very much said that exact same thing of don't get starstruck. They are just people just like you. They're the same. It reminds me actually of something that Isolita Campbell said in a previous episode. She said, people put on pants the same way that you do. They're just the same. So I do agree. I think that that's a really good way to look at it, especially when you're ramping up for a public speaking event or something like that. That's good advice to take away from this. So transitioning, though, I would love to hear more about your activism role and what that has entailed.
I've always been interested in the world and always voted every single election. My parents always voted. It was very important to our family. My mom worked at the polls for school boards and things like that. And we talked about things at dinner. So it was always part of our lives, and we still do. We had an election in 2016 that did not go the way I was hoping or the way I thought it should go. And it really just spurred me on. Like literally the day after, I said to myself, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore, because if I don't do this, who is going to do this? Who is going to be standing up for people who need to be supported? And I had read Amy Schumer's book. She wrote a book, and in her book, she talked about gun violence and how it had impacted her, because during one of the screenings of one of her movie, 2 people were shot in the movie theater. So this is something that certainly speaks to her. And so she had several resources at the back of the book about places to volunteer or where to spend some time. And I don't know, maybe like 2 months later, something happened. One of these horrific mass shootings happened. And I just said, I've got to do something. And so I pulled out those pages and I looked up Every Town, which is the organization that Moms Demand Action is it's a component of Every Town for gun safety. I found that there was a meeting in St. Louis, and so my husband and my sister and I all went to a meeting, and then we went to the next meeting the next month. And then the next month, they said they were looking for somebody to be the treasurer for the state of Missouri, and I raised my hand, and I haven't looked back. It is something that I'm passionate about. It is something that's incredibly important to me, and over the last 2 years, basically, I've just spent more and more time working with this issue, and it's unfortunate, a timely discussion for us to have today. I just got back. Actually, we had what we call Gun Sense University, which is our leadership conference for all the leaders in our organization, and we met in Washington, D.C. We were there for about 48 hours, and we do all kinds of things with guest speakers and learn new ways to support our communities, and it's a leadership conference, basically. And then, unfortunately, partway through the day yesterday, we found out about the El Paso shooting, and we were reminded that these mass shootings are horrific and absolutely terrible, and they're also a small fraction of the killings that go on every day with guns. We have over 100 people a day are shot and killed by a gun, and hundreds injured. And these go on in our inner cities. It goes on in our rural communities. It goes on unintentional shootings. There's just, the list goes on. And so, anyway, it's interesting that we had already scheduled to have this discussion today because we're all kind of still reeling from what happened in El Paso. And then, of course, we found out about Ohio this morning.
It's definitely a hard time to talk about something like this, but when is there ever really an easy time? Because we've been impacted by so many in the past already, but I was talking to somebody earlier today, and we were talking about it because I woke up and the first thing I saw was about Dayton, Ohio, and I said, the thing that sticks with me is just 4 in 1 week alone. Sunday to Sunday, there are 4 mass shootings. All of them are horrible, but 4 back to back to back, there's got to be something, right? So in your position and your activism, I know the obvious answer to this question, but why do you think that we're still dragging our feet on this problem? Why are we still not wrapping our heads around this problem?
Well, okay, I'd like to answer that kind of in 2 parts. One is the reason that we haven't made as much progress as we all think we should, or the reason that we're in this situation, is because we have so many more guns in the United States than we do in any other developed country. And the reason that is because the gun lobby and the NRA has been allowed to basically write our gun laws for the last 20 years, 30 years. And their agenda has been to sell more guns because they are backed and supported by the gun manufacturers. So they have millions and millions and millions of dollars, $30 million on Donald Trump's candidacy, and millions of dollars across every level of government to get people elected who support their agenda. And if they don't support their agenda, then they will support somebody else to be elected there will be a primary, basically, and that person could lose their seat. So for many, many years, the NRA and the gun lobby has been allowed to make the legislation that we as a country live by. So that's the first thing. I think that's why we are where we are. And there is a tremendous amount of progress being made. And I think that, like, on a day like today, people are just feel so hopeless and they feel like there's nothing we can do. And that's just not true. And I am not really good with statistics, but we at Moms Demand Action have been working tirelessly since the Sandy Hook shooting. That's really when our organization was formed. We have grown and grown and grown. We have I believe we're up to 4 million supporters. We had, as I said, 2,000 people travel to D.C. just to work on this issue and just to learn the best ways to work on this issue. When our federal government did not make any changes after Sandy Hook or hasn't really make our gun laws safer, other than the House did just pass last year background checks. And we have many states that have enacted tougher background checks, that have red flag laws, that have domestic violence abusers do not get to keep their guns. And this has happened in multiple states, multiple cities. We've also worked with businesses to make sure, like, for example, Starbucks does not allow open carry in their restaurants where they used to. People could take a gun if it was legal in that state to have a gun that could bring them into Starbucks. And so we, as an organization, spent a lot of time lobbying against that. And so Starbucks has changed their policy. There has been progress, and that's what I want people to know, that there is hope. We do have a way to make things better. We flipped the House in 2018 to a Democratic House, and all of those new members are gun sense candidates, meaning people that we as an organization supported. And we worked very, very, very hard to get those people elected. We canvassed, we made phone calls, we wrote letters, we sent postcards. I mean, you name it. We have a grassroots army that is huge and that is working like crazy. And people recognize that. The 2020 presidential candidates recognize that. If you look at pictures of those Democratic candidates, all of them have had pictures taken with us. Gun safety is now discussed in the primaries. It wasn't discussed 8 years ago, 12 years ago. And now it is something that we have proven is an issue that we can work on, we can change, and we have momentum behind us to make that change. 90% of Americans agree that we need tougher gun laws. Background checks is a no-brainer. And yet, while the House passed it, which is wonderful because, again, we flipped the House and we got a majority of legislators in the House of Representatives who support gun safety legislation, the Senate still has not brought that up for a vote. Change happens by us in society pushing our government to do things that we think are important. It's based on grassroots activism, and that's what we at Moms Demand Action are doing.
With your involvement in Moms Demand Action, is this a volunteer role or is it an actual job position?
It is 100% volunteer. We are all volunteers at the state level. There are some paid positions within our organization. Every town for gun safety is our kind of umbrella organization, and all of the activists within each state is a volunteer. And so nobody gets paid for any of the work that we do. It's 100% volunteer. And we have volunteers in all 50 states, including Alaska and Hawaii, and they were all represented in D.C. Folks from all over the country came.
So on top of all those positions that you mentioned at the beginning that you hold, and those are really important ones, how many hours and how much time do you allocate to this role as treasurer?
That is a good question. I would say I probably average, it all varies like anything else, but I would say I like to do the treasurer work itself is probably 10 hours a week, 5 to 10 hours a week, but I really try to do other things that aren't part of my treasurer role. We do a lot of outreach where we will go to different events. So by the time you add all that together, I'm probably 15 hours a week, I would say to 20, just kind of varies. But I love it. It's my passion. I feel like every hour I spend on this is making a difference. And one of the things that we do in Moms Demand Action is we have a sub-organization that focuses on what we call Be Smart, and that's all about keeping children safe and what you can do if you have a gun in the home. Again, we support the Second Amendment. We are not trying to take anyone's guns away. We're just trying to keep people safe and make sure that the wrong people don't have guns. And what Be Smart does is we teach people that they need to store their guns safely by putting it in a safe without their ammunition, because unintentional shootings, children getting a hold of a gun in the home and shooting themselves or someone else happens, multiple shootings a year that happen. And just by training people that if they do have a firearm in the home, they need to store it securely. The same thing if they have a firearm in their car, they need to have a safe in their car or lock it up, a gun lock. So I feel like every hour I spend on this is really saving lives, literally by talking to one person who goes home and gets a safe and stores their gun in a safe way. That's taking that chance away from somebody in that home unintentionally shooting someone. So the other piece to that is suicide. There's a large number of suicides that take place. Actually, that's the highest number of firearm deaths occur by suicide. And having a gun in the home is the number one factor. An unsecured gun in the home is the number one factor in determining if someone is going to die by gun suicide. It's not mental illness. It's not loneliness. It's not those things. It's the fact that they have easy access to a weapon.
I admire you for all of your hard work and dedication to this. This is certainly a really, really tough thing to do. So when you were here in D.C. this past weekend, the last few days, obviously, as everybody probably knows now, a lot of horrible, horrible things have just happened in the past week alone. So would you mind sharing a little bit of what that was like being with everybody there together who's so passionate about this cause and finding out about multiple shootings across the country that have affected dozens of lives?
Yeah, and one thing I do want to talk about is that mass shootings, again, are horrific and terrible. It is a small percentage of the number of gun deaths that occur. So even if we had met this weekend and there had not been a mass shooting, 100 people would have died every single day from gun violence. So it's something that we deal with every day. It's something that we know happens every day and that we're continually trying to stop. Obviously, when a mass shooting happens, it's just so tragic and it's so public. And so we were having lunch actually on yesterday, Saturday, and the news came about El Paso and the Texas group. There were over 100 Moms Demand Action volunteer leaders from Texas. And so they left and regrouped and got them, figured out what they wanted to do, what their action plan was going to be, how they were going to support their state. And then the rest of us continued on because we feel very strongly that the way we honor is with action. And we had some speakers come and speak to us. A survivor actually spoke to us right after this happened, and she had lost her son, and she said that she owes it to her son, and we owe it to everyone who has lost their life and every family who's dealing with the loss of their life to continue and to work and to work and to work, because the best thing we can do to honor those people is to act and to make changes. And I think we talked at the beginning of this about how to have this conversation is difficult. And I say no, it's the right time. It's always the right time. And it's extremely emotional and it's extremely difficult for us to get through. And we, as an organization, encourage our volunteers to do self-care, whatever it takes. We had therapists on site for the whole weekend. We'd had that scheduled anyway. We have quiet rooms. We have spaces for people to speak to other people quietly. So we have all of that available all the time during these conferences because it's just such a difficult discussion. And we have so many survivors there. And we want to make sure that we are taking care of our survivors. And not just the survivors, but the people who work on this, people who are activists. And so we are very careful about making sure that you take care of yourself first. But once you're to the point that you're ready, we need you. And we need you to fight and we need you to work, because the only way things will change is if we work together and we keep that fight. And we will win this fight. I have absolutely no doubt that the pendulum in this horrible gun violence society that we're living in right now will swing, and it will swing because we are pushing it. And we are pushing it very hard because even when these horrible things happen, we have got to act. So, yeah, so that's how we reacted. We had an action planned in the afternoon, Saturday afternoon, to either make phone calls to our legislators or to supporters and to get people to support us. We were packing backpacks to help with some school supplies and getting some communities that are hardest hit by gun violence and to help them be ready for school. And we were sending text messages to supporters. And so we continued. We broke up into our groups for people who were comfortable moving forward. And we acted. We acted all afternoon and we worked. And then in the afternoon, we took a little bit of a break, and then we had a dinner that we were going to have an awards banquet where we give out awards to different states for all the things that they've done for the year. And we just didn't feel, real comfortable about having a big party atmosphere. So we changed it, and anybody who wanted to, because we were in Washington, D.C., after dinner, marched to the Capitol and to the White House and demonstrated and used our First Amendment right for freedom of speech, and we expressed our frustration and we expressed our desire to have some action by our elected officials.
With all the work that you're doing and the work that Moms Demand Action is doing, I appreciate it. With the little bit of time that I've got here, the one question that I'd love to sum it up with is, since you started your role with Moms Demand Action, what's been the best story or the most inspiring thing that you've experienced since getting started?
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. Well, I would say, I think just the experience that I have, when I go to sleep at night, I do feel like I'm making a difference. I feel like the world is a better place because I'm in it. There's a little bit more of a spring in my step, maybe a little bit more of I'm doing something. I'm really working to make a difference. So I think that's just from a personal perspective, and the relationships that I've formed with people that I would never have met in a million years. We're not in the same location. They may have children, they may not have children, they may have young kids. We just wouldn't have met. Our paths would not have crossed. And yet these are some amazing people who do inspire me every day. And so I guess what inspires me the most is the number of people who really care and who are really out there working. I just find that inspiring every single day. I know people who have quit their jobs because they want to do this full time. Like our chapter leader from the state of Missouri was a full-time attorney civil rights attorney, and she quit her job because she wanted to devote her time to working on non-committed action. And I mean, that's just inspiring. And she's not alone. There's story after story like that of people who have just really dedicated their lives to this issue or other issues. There's plenty of them out there. And as you become active in this one area, you know, I've met people who are active in many other issues that I certainly believe in and support.
I'm excited to see, as you say, that the pendulum is headed in the direction that we're hoping for. So I'm excited for it to officially be on the other side. Okay, well, thank you for sharing all of that really inspiring story of yours and all of the great work that you're doing. I hope our listeners really took something away from this episode. So now, the only other question that I have for you is, who is next for She Plus?
Well, I am going to nominate my representative for the state of Missouri and the House of Representatives, LaDonna Applebaum. She represents our district, and she's fighting tirelessly to make things better for Missouri. And we live in a supermajority Republican state, and she is a Democrat, so she has her work cut out for her. And yet she's continually optimistic and all that kind of stuff. So I think she'd be a great addition.
Well, that sounds very exciting. I would love to have her on, and I will follow up with you to figure out how I can get in touch with her. I'm sure she's very busy, just like you, working tirelessly to get the results that many of us are hoping for. But I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I really, really enjoyed it. And thank you so much, Randee.
Thank you, Elise. You're great. Appreciate it.